Happy Thursday, y'all. It's cold. I like it. I like it. Don't worry, it'll be like in the 90s on Saturday. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
I can. Okay.
Good morning from here.
Alrighty, welcome to Let's Go Live. I have with me fantasy and children's romance author Linda Ling. Welcome, Linda.
It's good to be back. It's been so long.
I was thinking about that when I did the original post to promote this on Tuesday. I had to go back and I thought, okay, it's only been like 5 months. It's been like 7. I think we talked March or February.
Yeah, I think so. I think at the end of it, you told me that you wanted to plan something in summer, and then I forgot all about that. And then by the end of summer, I was like, wasn't I supposed to chat with Gigi again?
Well, this year has
November already.
I can't believe it's already November 1st or November 2nd. This year has just flown by.
Yeah, it has definitely. I hope it's been a good year for you. I can tell it has been, actually.
I don't know, this year, it's so interesting because people have asked, and I've had some really health challenges. As you know, I know me and you have communicated about that. So health-wise, it's been probably one of my worst years, and one of my worst years in years. But then with all that time to think in the hospital, you can just type. Who is that on the screen?
That's our Cavapoo Sky.
He's so cute. Sky, a boy or a girl?
It's that girl. She's silly.
How old is she?
She's almost 2. So she's in her teens. She likes barking at strangers who come into the house, but actually she's quite mild. She just pretends she's tough.
How big is she? I think you just need to like pick her up, and she could be part of the interview.
You can pick her up, but she's gone off. She's gone off.
All right, so are you okay? Can we continue? Did you want to introduce someone else on the screen?
You want to be interviewed?
No.
No. Okay, then go. All right.
Well,
My son.
I know we're moms first, so that obviously is priority, and then somewhere in there we can be an author.
Yeah, I know. How do I do it? How do you do it? I don't know. Yeah.
Because we started off like sleep deprived. You didn't get any sleep in your pregnancy, and then you had the baby and you didn't get any sleep. So it's been like one constant like caffeine, sugar, drip feed through their childhood.
It's been 10 years of sleep deprivation, which I think only starting this year I started to catch up on. Yeah. So it's a nice relief. Yeah. Anyway, what was that? Yeah, you were telling me that you are having a little bit of health problems this year.
Oh yeah,
I'm so glad that you're here now.
Nobody wants to talk about that. Everybody wants to hear about you, Linda. You look so good. I know it's been a wonderful year. You have to then walk us through what your year has looked like, because I know you've put out some releases, you have children's, you have your fantasy trilogy. So walk us through all your projects now, and then we can get into what's coming in the future.
Okay. All I can tell you is that this past month has been personally a lot of adulting. There's been so much stuff happening, but I won't get into that. Yes, we'll focus on writing. Okay, so this year started out very rapidly. I told myself, okay, I'm gonna just push out one book, and we'll make it towards the second half of the year. But then when I started the editing, proofreading, formatting process, everything just happened so fast. And then in July, at the end of July, my 5th book baby came out. It's the 4th book in my fantasy series, and it's a prequel novel. So it's a little bit unusual because it's not part of the trilogy, but it sets up events for the trilogy. And I love the cover because it's done by a fellow indie author, and I'm beta reading her book now. So it's really nice. She did the back for
Okay,
me
that
too.
cover is stunning. And when it came out, I know that I put it on blast in my stories and featured it in one of my shout outs because it's so beautiful. So the title is All That Glitters Is Not Gold
Yep,
by Linda Ling.
that's what it's.
And so when you said this is the prequel to the Surrender and Forge series, what's the name of that series? I know the Forge and Surrender are the books.
Land of the Sun. I
So
wish I had come up with a better series name. And the series name makes sense if you think about the mythology and the religion of one of the kingdoms, but I wish I'd come up with a more encompassing names. I did. But yes, Sundered, Forged, and Renewed. And this is the prequel.
that's so beautiful. But I know sometimes when we get into these books, then you think of all the better names, the better titles, the better character names. You're like, dang it, all you can do is just like recycle it to the next series that you're going to start.
I know. So I am starting a sequel series, or rather I've started writing. I haven't started actually working on it and preparing it for publication because I'm just so focused on other things now, right? So there is a sequel series coming after this book, which is the third book, and I've planned it properly. Nice series name. I'm quite happy with it. Even my to play it safe for my vampire novel, that one I'll talk about in a bit. That one I'm coming up with a proper series name too, and there's gonna be a series name switch midway through. I planned all that properly.
I love it. I've made the same mistake. I did not properly brand my dark romance series. And so now I'm trying to go back and run after that train that's already left the station. And so on the
Oh
second
no,
series I launched, I'm like, girl, get this right.
I know,
Not
but
that hard.
I think for your first series, I know it's supposed to be pronounced Canyon, but then I never noticed that, and I always call it Canon, and I'm like, who's Canon or what's Canon?
So it's Canyon City, Colorado, and that's how Canyon is spelled, with that accent aigu or accent aigu. I think that's what they call it in French. I don't even know what it is in English, which is so silly. But anyway, it sat there. And so I was like, that's not the best name. And so now I did it right. I got a series logo. Are you going to do a series logo on your vampire?
Are you doing the interview on me? And yeah, so series names, yes.
Are
Yeah.
you going to do a series logo for your vampire series, though?
Good question. No, I'm not gonna bother. It takes. I'm not sure if you've realized. Don't mind her barking. She's a teenager. I'm not sure if your romance covers, feel pretty clean. I don't know. That's my impression. Okay, forgive me. I'm not a dark romance author.
No, I like, except for my new series, it's kind of busier.
It takes so much effort just coming up with a cover that usually I don't really have a lot of effort for a series brand by the end of it. If I can just fix down a font, that's pretty good too. And then I find that each book, the coloring scheme of each book differs as well. That finding a series theme that unites us all is hard enough. So like coming up with a series name is always difficult enough, much less trying to brand it and trying to unify it. So nah, I'm not gonna go that way. If something comes up, I will let you know.
Well, I think fantasies have some of the most beautiful covers out there. And it definitely takes, to me, I do have a professional designer for all my covers. I'm blessed that way that I can afford that. But boy, fantasy, I think it's almost like required because the expectation and the level of the colors is just high level, top-notch designs. So I know exactly what you're saying. And then there has to be a fair amount of consistency through the different covers, even though the interior story could be totally different. It's hard to do.
And yeah, and honestly, I'm sure all of us fantasy authors feel the same way. A lot of fantasy covers look the same,
Yeah,
and
similar.
how do you stand out from that? But at the same time, letting a reader know when they look at the title, they look at the cover, okay, this is fantasy. So it's hard.
But I think, Linda, we've all taken those marketing courses, and they're like, okay, well, you have to do your comparative analysis, right? So go out, look at the virtual bookshelf, be like, okay, if they're all using like purple, blue, and pink for fantasy or high fantasy, then your cover needs to be, purple, blue, and pink. And you're right, because it's like it's such a balance. I feel like us romance authors, we have it a lot easier than fantasy authors, because you guys have to not only like blend in but stand out at the same time.
Yeah. Talking about romance covers, I mean, I always I've been telling people that the romance covers nowadays, the discrete covers that are pastel pink and blue, I'm such a sucker for them. Part of my shelf is now pastel pink and blue because I just buy these romance books with the discrete covers before I even read them, and then when I read them, I'm like, why did I buy this?
This does not
Yeah,
match. Yeah, when they say don't judge a book by its cover, those discrete covers are gaining the popularity, but the insides are not discrete.
Look at the pastel colors. I mean, previously the book covers that I bought, they were all black and white.
Of course.
So these guys just stick out.
They do. So Not All That Glitters Is Gold came out, I think, in July?
It was really, everything really happened very fast. And then in May, I sent, I put this up on Book Sirens. I called for ARC readers. And then by July, boom, it was out already. And then I spent the next couple of months marketing. And I'm still gonna keep plowing on with that. But I'm already preparing to publish my vampire book early next year.
Okay, so on the Forge series, this prequel then wraps it up. That is done. And then your other series is like a spin-off. So will we see the same people before we talk about the vampire one?
Okay, so the sequel series is I tried to make it a spin-off. It's kind of a spin-off if I focus on other characters, but it's also a sequel in that it does follow after the events of my trilogy. So not that long. I think there's the series ends in spring and it starts off again in winter. So not that long. Not that long. That's why I still consider it like a sequel. It's not really a spin-off.
Okay, that's intriguing. So will we see the same cast of characters, through the first series in the second series?
Some of them. I let my creative brain take over a lot in this one, and even though I tried to come back to my original cast a little bit more, but my creative brain didn't really want to. Most of the times, she was like, I call her she, okay? She was like, you need to talk about the people who didn't get enough of the spotlight. So my main character, Princess Phelan, she's the youngest of 3 siblings, and so the oldest one got quite a bit of spotlight because there's something special about him in my series. And then Princess got 2 books, right, all about her, because these are her adventures kickstart the series.
Yeah.
And then the middle child got hardly anything other than the fact that he told the princess, please don't go off on silly adventures, and if you're gonna go, I'm gonna follow you. That kind of thing. And so my sequel series, part of it focuses a little bit more of him, just to give him a bit of airtime. And I've discovered more about him. when I
He's
started writing, I discovered a lot about this middle sibling that I didn't know. I was like, oh, you're not as squeaky clean as I thought you were.
middle children are not okay. Well, the
I
parents
wouldn't
are
know.
dealing with the first and dealing with the middle, and I mean the little, and ignoring all the middle one.
I I wouldn't know because I only have one sibling. So when I started writing about this fellow, I was like, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, I'm one of four sisters, and let me tell you, we all have our secrets. Okay,
I imagine. I mean, I have 4 kids, so I'm like, oh my goodness, you guys.
so in his series, is he going to be the whole series, or is he going to split it?
Yeah.
And is it multiple point of view also?
Um, it's multiple point of view because everyone has, yeah, Susanna agrees. I'm a middle child.
Is that
Yeah. Um,
guilty?
So it is multi-point of view. I mean, that's the style I tend to write, but I am very mindful that multi-point of view is something that not everyone can get into, and there's always the danger of sounding the same for everybody. So hopefully I've managed to do that. Um, however, the focus of each book focuses on the same cast of multi-point of view characters because it depends on where the events are taking place, and it kind of unifies later on. Yeah.
So, how many books do you plan on this series being?
I planned 4. It's gone beyond that. So, I
What?
mean, this is just very preliminarily. I mean, like I said, I let my creative brain take over and I just wrote without really thinking of anything. So, I haven't finished writing all the books required, but it's blown up and I'm not very happy with that. Creative brain is very happy because she's like, "Oh, yay, I'm having so much fun. You have tons of characters," and I'm like, I can't keep track and I don't like this. But I would say maybe 4 or 5. No, wait, 4 is where I finished, but okay, 5, 5.
So,
Yeah,
5 in this new series, in addition to the other 4 out?
yeah, yeah.
That is so
Yeah.
ambitious.
No, it sounds a bit much now that we're talking about it. Maybe I should
No.
rethink this.
Okay, there, I know of a romance. Well, okay, Sarah Cannon. She has that, YA fantasy, and I think she's trying to wrap up her series on like the 12th or 13th book.
Well, no, I mean, I've read a Canadian author who writes urban fantasy. She's got werewolves and vampires and witches, and she wrapped up her series after 12 or 13 books, and each was okay. I think the middle kind of like I forgot what the middle is like, but the start, the first 3 or 4, and the last like 2 or 3, I remember those because they're so good.
Yeah.
So I know people have done that, and I don't know, it just feels daunting thinking about it now that we're talking about it.
That's the logical side. That's like the business side of being an author, like, woo. But I
Yeah.
love, explain to everybody what creative brain is, because I followed you for a long time. I know exactly what she is. I enjoy your posts that you put up. She's
Yeah.
hilarious. So go ahead.
Yeah, I haven't posted about Creative Brain in a very long time, but so
I
so
know.
when I started, huh?
Why not? We love it.
Well, okay, because of Threads. Okay, blame Threads. I've been posting Creative Brain stuff on Threads and having a lot of fun there. And then after that, there ends up being like, you have to start out a separate post on Instagram. And okay, that's social media. But anyway, yeah, hi.
There she is.
Shoo, I'm talking about Creative Brain. Okay, so when I started out writing, I always thought it was me, myself, and I, right? But then somewhere along the journey, I realized, there's almost like this separate entity in my brain, this creative side of me, and I decided to call her Creative Brain because I know that's not a very creative name, and I always realize that it's a female entity. It speaks in my voice, and so therefore it's Creative Brain and it's a her. Um, And she is the more shenanigans, unruly side of me, and she comes up with all kinds of nutty things to do, including inspiring me with book ideas when I'm not ready to write something new. And then interestingly enough, sometime, I don't know when that was, sometime last year, I realized there might be a second entity who is Creative Brain's counterpart. And it feels like a male entity, and that one is Vampire Editor, and actually it turns out to be one of my vampire characters. And if you read my vampire book, you'll get to meet him.
Oh, I didn't know he's going to be in there.
Well, because he started out as a character, and I realized that actually he is that other voice. So Creative Brain is in charge of the fantasy stuff. He is in charge of the vampire stuff, and so he's a bit more morose, darker, more bossy. Definitely bossy. And I posted something. I posted something on Instagram that says that he's so bossy that he didn't want to be relegated to the second book in my vampire series. He wanted to appear in the first book and on the very first page. So he got his way. That has indeed been what is happening.
Okay, I think that is absolutely precious how you quantify those two egos.
Yeah. And you know me, I'm in mental health, and then here we are going on about, do you hear voices?
I know, but that's what makes it so funny. It was like if you go to your urologist, his name is like Dr. Butts, right? And so that would be funny. And this is what's so ironic, because you're like, I literally am a doctor of mental health, and yet I have these voices in my head.
Yeah. And then you know how as writers we talk about our whole cast, our whole crew of characters talking about us, and it does happen. So I mean, there's something special and unique about that. I think people who don't write don't understand this aspect of writing.
Sure. I will be on here doing these author interviews, and many times people are like, I have no idea where it came from. It's magic. The characters took over. They did something. I was talking to an author on DMs, and she's like, my characters just fell into bed with each other. I don't even know what to do with that. And that's what is so beautiful about the whole writing process. And I feel like only authors know, because when you talk to even some romance readers, any readers are like, what? But you wrote it. And you're like, kind of.
Yep. That side character just jumped out at me and took over. And so I decided to write a whole book about them. This is because of that. The villain in this story didn't want to shut up. And then so I was like, okay, fine, I'll write a whole book for you.
Okay, so that's the prequel is the villain?
So the premise of this series is that there is a villain who has no voice and uses thralls to speak for him. And one day I just came up with, well, okay, maybe the villain spoke to me and said that, you know what, I need a voice. This happened.
I love it. Because, let's be honest, Linda, when you had this series, the series has been fully done for what, a year?
Yeah, a year plus, yeah.
When you have a series that's been done for a year out in the market, how in the world do you go back and say, I'm going to write a prequel? I think that's one of the most challenging pieces of work to do. So how did you do it?
Well, the nice thing is the prequel novel takes place like over 1,000 years before the main series. So, and the premise of my main series is that there was a catastrophic event that occurred that changed the landscape, changed all the kingdoms. So the prequel could essentially take place in the same world, but everything's different. And, it made it simpler to write out in that sense.
Wow.
But I know what you mean. There were certain events that I had to hold to that couldn't change. And
that's hard because I know what you're saying. You're talking about, let's say, for lack of a better word, like an apocalyptic event, right? We've seen those, all these movies, you know, there's the before where everybody's happy, there's the after where everybody's, you know, it's destroyed. But yet you have to marry back some of the events in your series to this brand new idea.
Yeah. Yeah. So it didn't make it too difficult. Fortunately, it was relatively easy. And in fact, the hardest part I would say was sticking to prophecy. Uh, Let me tell you, as a fantasy author, don't go with prophecies. They're so difficult. You have to write them, and then after that, you have to stick to them, you know, and then you have to decide, do they rhyme or do they not rhyme? And then when they not rhyme, they sound weird. And then when they rhyme, they sound like children's nursery rhymes. So,
Okay, can we pause right there? What do you mean? Are you writing your own prophecies, or are you like borrowing from, like, I don't know, ancient prophecies? Or unpack that a little bit more.
so um, uh, fantasy part was in the law of fantasy, especially high fantasy. Sometimes it helps when you have prophecies or mythology, right? Okay, mythology is easier to deal with because you can say, okay, it's
Like Greek, yeah.
this part is accurate, this part is not accurate. But when you tie it into the framework of a prophecy, then you become a little bit more stuck, and you have to make sure that what you write subsequently about a certain character that the prophecy might be about makes sense. And then sometimes you also have to kind of write a little bit about who said the prophecy. So the good thing is prophecies can be open to interpretation, and that's what I've done. I've made sure that it's open enough that, okay, someone could come along and misinterpret it. So, but yeah, prophecies are not easy because they have to have that, you know, it has to be about someone, and then, you know, if it is about that particular person, that person's life story has to fit with what you've written already in the prophecy. And once you publish that first book with a prophecy, you have to make sure book 2 and book 3 make sense.
Yeah. Well, and I've heard fantasy authors call it like the rules of magic, the hard boundaries, you know, that you can't cross.
Yeah.
So it's similar to what you're saying, correct, with the prophecies?
Yeah, it is. It is. So yeah, fantasy is bound by a lot of rules. So when I'm not sure if you remember, before NaNoWriMo last year, I NaNoWriMo'd my own romance novel, which is sitting in a drawer, literally, and nothing's happening to it.
Oh.
And I found it so much easier to write that romance novel because it was set in the real world. There's cell phones, there's social media, there's, you know, cabs, you know,
There's
and
no magic systems. There's no cross entities, you know, where some are human, some are fae, some are special powers.
Yeah. So it was so much easier because I was not bound by I was bound by rules I already knew. I did not have to come up with rules.
Oh, and the language too. Obviously, you can't use modern day language when you're writing fantasy.
Yeah.
And that's very challenging to do your research to be like, okay, what language set do I base my fantasy series on?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so it's really fun to world build in its own way, but it can be tiresome. So it's a balance. It's a balance. I have a lot of fun a lot of times, but then sometimes I'm like, why did I choose this genre?
So that's a great point, though. How do you keep all the little minute details that readers will pick up on? Oh my gosh, you say the wrong thing, readers spot it. How do you keep all these nuances? Because yes, you built the world. Yes, you have all the details, but you forget. You forget, like, oh, that one has fae ears, or that one has a purple heart that's on the outside of their body, or you know what I mean? How do you organize your details in your books?
Spreadsheets.
Okay, say that again.
Spreadsheet. Excel spreadsheet. Okay, so I have Excel spreadsheets. I know that they say keep it organized with Scrivener. I've not tried Scrivener, but I have multiple Word documents. I have a notebook, and I have Excel spreadsheets. And sometimes to practice that I've remembered certain key details, I just write it out on blank pieces of paper, and then I put the blank pieces of paper aside because I know I'm never going to refer to it again. So it just kind of helps me remember stuff. And then if all else fails, I look back at the books I've published and say, what exactly did I write about this person?
I love it.
I find myself referring to my books like textbooks, and I never thought I'd be in that position.
At least not anymore. You're like, I already went to medical school. I already had to refer to those.
I know.
Well, I know what you're saying because Scrivener, which is, you know, like I use Word, you said you use Word. I think because we've been in business so long, that's what every corporate entity has ever been, you know, built on, right? Is Microsoft Office Suite. Yeah. And so I've heard Scrivener is amazing at organizing and, you know, all your note cards and all that. However, because it's so robust, it can do everything, and there's a steep learning curve. So for us, you know, it's like, you know, Microsoft junkies, we just get in, we go on Word, we do Excel, and we don't have to think otherwise. Yeah. But if we were to have to switch, we're back to being a student.
I know it was a steep learning curve for me learning how to self-publish. So I'm still recovering from that.
Oh my gosh, I feel as an indie author, someone says something, you're like, what are you doing? What is this? Like, you know, there's so much you don't know. Yeah. And I had told someone, they're like, if you could describe being an indie author, I was like, death by 1,000 steps. And I was like, oh wait, that sounds super discouraging. But that's what it is. Who is that on the screen?
He's not in school today, so.
He's good to hang out with mom. That's cool.
Oh, the doggy, yeah. Yeah. So that's how I keep everything organized. I have multiple, like I have physical notebooks, and I have virtual notepads open to refer to.
Well, are you plotting then this next series in those, you know, in Excel and in your notebooks? Or are you a pantser?
Oh yeah, good question. So the initial drafts, I pants my way through it. Like I had roughly something. So like I mentioned earlier, I let creative brain take over, and she just kind of like la 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 la. And now, okay, not now, but I know that eventually I have to properly plot things out. And I started to, like, after the first whip of the first part of the series, and then creative brain moved me on to book 2, 3, 4, right? And that's when I was like, okay, you know what, we can't just go all over the place. Let's just plot things out a little bit better so that we know where everything is going. And I need that, otherwise I know things will just go everywhere, and that to me, to my organized perfectionistic me, that doesn't sit well.
It drives you nuts. Yeah. Okay, so that's fascinating. So, how many books have you already written in this new series?
4. Yeah.
How long did it take you to write those? You just got done writing All That Glitters Is Not Gold.
Oh, okay. Oh, so this is a little bit unusual. I wrote these 4 last year, and I wrote All That Glitters. I finished the first draft of All That Glitters Is Not Gold 2 years ago.
What?
Yeah, before I started my social media journey, when it was just me, myself, and I doing my own thing, not having any idea what's going on. I finished the first draft 2 years ago, and then last year, after I published the 3rd book in the trilogy, or while waiting for the work to be done for the 3rd book, that's when I finished the 4 in the sequel. So I forgot to mention that because I had written the sequels, I established a lot more backstory and lore and mythology of my world, which also made rewriting this book and making it more polished a lot easier. So readers for this book will know that I start off the book with a little bit of how to say, like a little bit touching on gods and goddesses, and I don't really expand on it here, but I do in my sequel, and I could pull from the sequel because I'd already written a little bit about that, like gods, goddesses, mythology, legends, and all that, and so I put that here a little bit.
Oh my gosh, it's almost like having your own like encyclopedia that you created for your world.
It's crazy.
That's so cool. That's not crazy. So you wrote those 4 books last year.
Last year, so they're sitting in the cyber drawer, they're waiting for me, but then I decided, okay, you know what, I need to do my vampire book first. You guys just hold on.
I am amazed. So you have 4 and you shelved them. And then how many have you written in the vampire series and how long has that taken you?
Okay, you're gonna be amazed. This one, I have 5 written.
Oh my gosh, you're blowing me away. Y'all do not understand. She is a doctor. She has patients, clinic. She has, for her mental health, obviously mental health at her is what her field is. 4 kids, happily married. Linda, what are you taking, eating, drinking, smoking? What are you doing? We need some tips.
Look, the reality is, I needed to write all this in the past few years because I spent 10 years having children, looking after them,
Yeah.
looking after my career, and I kind of feel like I lost myself at some point. And so the past few years with COVID, I changed jobs. I went from working in a hospital to a small clinic, not really my own practice, but a group practice. And my kids are bigger, and I just took the time to look after myself. And all of this is the result of doing that.
That's beautiful. So really, your author journey is a gift to yourself, self-love.
Yeah. And embracing that part of me because I started writing as a teenager and I stopped sometime in college because I thought, nah, this doesn't make sense. People laugh at me.
Well, we do that,
I'm
right? We talk ourselves out of it, and you're like, I got to go to school, and I got to get a degree, and I have to get a good job, and I'll work there,
Yeah.
and then maybe when I'm 65.
So I did that. I talked myself out of being a writer for 10, no, 15 years. I tried writing I tried writing Sundered sometime during that dry spell of 15 years, and because I talked myself out of writing, I only wrote halfway. I finished like half the book and never touched it again until a few years ago. And you see, you look at Sunder, it's not a thick book at all. And that's how little I wrote in all those years. But then everything else that came after that took just a little bit of time in comparison because I had so much to say.
Do you think too it was a mental shift with you where you are like, I am going to embrace this side? I do have my practice, I do have my family to take care of, but for a piece of me, because it's so easy to lose ourselves as parents, you're so and so's mom or so and so's wife, and or so and so at work, and you're like, who am I? What do I like? And what are my hobbies? So do you think once you made that mental switch, it was just flowing out of you?
Yeah, yeah. It was a bit of a mental struggle. I there was a part of me that was like, no, I don't want to do this.
Was it
I,
too
I, I, I
luxurious? Was it too frivolous? Like, this is what?
yeah, it just felt that logical part of me felt like, yeah, it felt frivolous. It felt like, nah, it feels selfish.
Yeah.
It's always gonna be a hobby. It shouldn't be so big. But then I talked to friends. I talked to 2 close friends, and I talked to my husband about it, and I even talked to my kids, and everyone was like, yeah, just go for it. And my husband was the best about it. He said, don't call it a hobby, call it a passion project. Um,
Love it.
and always remember to have fun. If you stop having fun, then stop doing it.
He is so sweet. I know you talked about him before, but he has always been, really supportive. I know he's read your stuff. He's not your target audience. Which is,
He's not.
it's so cute though, because there are a lot of authors on this journey that, they are married or they do have a significant other and that are not supported. And I do hear that on repeat. And it kind of breaks my heart because you just don't, to me, you don't want to die with your music inside. And this is your music. It was always meant to come out at some point in your
Yeah.
life. And look at what a beautiful journey it is now that it's coming out. Oh, you're like a factory manufacturing these.
Yeah, it's been when I tell people about the number of manuscripts I
Are you
have,
like,
even I get amazed. Even I get amazed. I'm like, oh my goodness, how did that happen? Yeah, so um because I have so many manuscripts and because they're set in two different genres, I always feel like I have two casts of characters going on in my head. That's why I think I have two different entities in charge of them.
well, it makes sense though, because there are two totally different genres and two totally different worlds. And so I feel like when you have a masthead, it's easier to keep them separated.
Mm, yeah, yeah. So and it's a necessity actually,
In
unless
what regard?
to keep them separated. That's what you said, right?
Oh, yeah. I didn't know if you meant like it's a necessity for you to write, because I know that once we start and once we have a creative outlet for who we are and part of that self love, self care, it becomes a necessity, just like, picking up the dry cleaning or cooking dinner for the
Oh,
kids.
yeah. Yeah, so people do ask me nowadays, how do you find time to write? I'm like, the time that I could have spent reading, I'm writing.
Yeah.
And,
Because you
and
need to, those characters just bubble up in your head and they're like needing to get out.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And there's just so much. The crazy thing is, since starting this author journey, that there's been more. So I always thought that, okay, I'm just gonna write fantasy. At the most, what I'll do is I have my vampire books. That's about it. But then sometime last year, Creative Brain decided, go write romance. So I had that one romance book sitting around, and I'm not sure what to do with it. And then I joke with this other author. She writes dystopian with a bit of magical realism. That's a new thing that I never discovered, and I realized my vampire books are magical realism. But anyway, I was reading her book, and halfway through the book, I DM'd her and I told her, my creative brain is talking to me while I'm reading your book, and I think it's gonna be your fault. And at the end of the book, my creative brain truly threw me another dystopian idea, which involves zombies. And I hate writing about zombies because they're so creepy, which is really ironic because my fantasy thriller trilogy has zombies in it. My villain is all about zombies. But I don't like zombies.
But don't you find that fascinating how your brain just keeps continuing to pump out ideas?
It it is. And I'm more often than not, I'm grateful to Creative Brain for that.
Okay, so before we talk about the romance side, what is the plan? You have literally two series, 9 books, kind of not necessarily polished and ready to go up to your standard, but they are there and they are written and they are ready.
Yeah, so
Which,
it's
congratulations, because that's huge, Linda. That's huge. Some people
thank
go their
you.
whole life and they're like, on my bucket list, I want to write a book. And you're like, hey, I got 9 sitting in my cyber file.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate that. I always feel a little bad when people are asking me, "Oh, are you working on anything new?" I'm like, "No. I'm just trying to polish up all the old stuff that I have."
No, you need to reframe that and be like, girl, let me tell you, just hold on to your hairdo because it'll be coming out.
I know, and reframe. I use the word reframe like several times in a day.
Hey,
Yeah, so what's next? Okay. I'm very excited because I am working on my vampire novel, preparing to release it early next year. I roughly have a release date, but because my cover is not done, I only just finished working on the tagline and the blurb, and let me tell you, the blurb, that was painful.
They are.
And editing is not quite done, so I have nothing to share other than it's a vampire book with a little bit of with magical realism, so that's a thing. Um, and there are 5 books planned. There might be more. Oh gosh, my vampire characters also will not shut up. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
are you,
I need to tell
do
you
you,
about how they
go
will
ahead.
set up later on. Ask me about that later on.
No, I want to hear about it because I'm wondering, do you use voice notes? Do you scribble stuff down? I'm sure it comes to you at all sorts of odd hours. I know on Creative Brain, you've posted like in the middle of the night while you're trying to go to sleep. And that's when
Yes.
all your invert, like all your ideas come. So how do you capture all that?
So I have a physical notebook, and I make sure that I always carry around a physical notebook. Failing which, I have my phone, so I can quickly, type down something. And it was so funny because we were in church one day, and my eldest daughter, whom I told you before is a fellow budding writer,
Yes.
she discovered that she needs notebooks too because an idea struck her while in church one day, and she just grabbed my notebook from me. And then I was like, what the heck? That was so rude, you know? And she was like, I have an idea. I was like, oh, okay, okay, I get it, I get it. And then I left her alone.
The mom was like, that's rude as hell. But the author was like, oh, honey, here you go.
You take your time, go, go, go.
I love it. That's so cute.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do you control Vampire Brain? You have Vampire Editor and then Creative Brain talking to you all the time. How do you manage all that?
I just let them talk to me. Right now, Vampire Editor is doing a little bit more talking because I'm focusing on my vampire book and trying to get it polished up. Now, he's a character, and he's also a character in a different sense.
He's bossy.
Yeah, he is so because he's a character, he's difficult to talk to because he has stuff he doesn't like talking about.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reality of it. And a lot of times it was like talking to a brick wall. And I'm like, I know there's stuff inside you. Can you just tell me what happened? And usually the answer is a flat no. So it's it's,
Okay,
it's
that's
almost
really fascinating then. So how do you get it out?
oh, he doesn't mind talking about other people. He doesn't mind saying, oh, this happened to that person, this happened to that person, that happened to that person. But then when it comes to what happened to you, nope.
I feel like that's a lot of people nowadays, though.
Yeah, so often as the writer or as the person who is just documenting the incident report, I say, okay, fine, we'll talk about other people. I'll write about this character and all that, you know all the juicy details. But then oftentimes when it comes to his turn and his point of view, it's I have to coax, I have to like, come on, let it out, please.
Okay, spoken like a true medical professional when you said incident report.
Yeah, I know. We have so many of those.
Oh gosh, I think everybody has dealt with those in the past.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what's going on in my head now. I have Vampire Editor in charge. Um, um, but I think he will be a little bit noisier for the subsequent books. He's a little bit quieter now because I'm so focused on editing and getting my manuscript edited, and he's happy with it, so he's got nothing to say.
Oh, good, good, good. Okay, because that's what I was going to ask you. If you have 5 books, obviously these are written. How long does it take you to edit them, get it to market? And so would you release 5 in 2 years, 5 in 1 year, 5 in 3 years? What's your timing roughly?
Well, so so the with I think that for someone who writes in the more fantasy realm, it's really different from what I've noticed about romance authors. You guys churn things out so quickly.
It's
I don't know
the
how you do it.
readers. The readers are voracious. And I will tell
Oh,
you, my books are 125 to 130,000 words. I've had people say, "Oh, I read it in one day." I'm like, "What?"
wow.
They know the details. So it's not like they just skimmed your book. Like they're voracious. But I know
Mm,
fantasy, people are just as loyal. They want
mm.
that next book as fast as they can.
Yeah, I've discovered that. But I think fantasy authors do take
Mhm.
longer. So I'm taking my time. I'm telling myself one a year. If I can squeeze two, because my vampire book is coming out early next year, if I can squeeze a second one, I'm okay with it. Yeah. So I mean, if you look at traditional publishing, it's kind of like that. They do one a year.
Correct. Traditional publishing, they're slower because the sheer volume
Yeah.
that they have going through. And now that there was that recent consolidation, and it escapes me who are the two. So now I think there's like four major publishing houses, the
Oh
big,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
and so because they represent so many authors, it's literally just, cogs in the machine is what, because I get some mentoring. I have an author coach, and she used to work at one of the big firms, Penguin, and so she said it's just a volume. Like there's
Mm.
literally not enough Tuesdays to release. I
Yeah.
thought, oh, this
Um,
is interesting.
yeah. So for myself, I think, well, I mean, the bottom line is I have a day job and I love my day job. It's not something that it's not something I'll quit. It's not something I'll give up for writing. Unless you tell me I become like Stephen King, that's not
Well,
something I'll give up.
and yours is different because yours is important to other people. You're helping people. They rely upon you for the criticality of their life.
Yeah.
It's not like some jobs are not so critical or important, I think, but yours is. And so it would be hard to walk away because you have so many people, not your family, relying upon you.
Yeah, yeah. So and like I said, I love my job too. So it's a big part of me. It's not something that I would say um uh reduce the amount of time I spend on it just to publish more or publish more quickly. So as a result, these 9 manuscripts are gonna just have to wait their turn.
Well, and I was going to say, so the vampire would be one book per year. And then you also had the sequel or the follow up, the rest of the series to the fantasy. Where does that slot in?
So if it would okay, so hang
Linda,
on. My son is kicking a ball. Okay. So if my vampire book comes out early next year, so I have the rest of the year to maybe work on the fantasy one, maybe. Or I don't know. I think I might do two vampire ones next year. We'll see.
it's such a blessing, though, to be able to have literally your own catalog just waiting in the wings.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So it really depends what I feel like working on. Um, uh, right now, like I said, my head is all in the vampire world with my vampire cast. So my fantasy guys, thankfully, are keeping quiet and leaving me alone, even though I feel a little bit bad about that. Which brings me to my point about my vampire cast not wanting to shut up and not wanting to keep quiet and just talking and talking. That recently happened. Uh, Gosh, when was that? Last month, I posted beta reader feedback for my vampire novel. I'm not sure if you saw some of that. Shh, I'm talking about my vampire stuff.
He's so sweet. I
Um,
did see one post on it, yes.
yeah, and fortunately or unfortunately for me, while I was posting about my beta reader feedback, and at the same time, I happened to be listening to the audiobook of, that I'm not sure if you're aware, there's been a little bit more fantasy books these days about Chinese fantasy. So I'm Chinese, and when I see books like that, I feel both happy and a little bit like, how good could it be? Because Chinese fantasy is weird. Chinese legends are weird.
I
And I
don't
was
know
really,
because the Chinese dynasties and the fantasies, I mean, they are just so rich and the detail. I feel like, oh, if you could do it right, it would be like chef's kiss. Like it would be, there's so much inspiration to draw from. I could
so
never do it. I would mess it
Chinese
up.
Chinese history is rich, it's
Yeah,
beautiful,
it
but
is.
I find Chinese mythology
Mm-hmm.
messy and very difficult to work with or do anything
Yeah.
with. So for those authors from with Chinese backgrounds who have managed to do something, good for them. So I was listening to the audiobook of one of these and posting beta reader feedback. And then the other thing what I haven't mentioned is my vampire crew, a lot of them are East Asian. And
Really?
my my the two my vampire editor is of Chinese heritage, not entirely, but of Chinese heritage. And the other main character that he converses with in this book is Chinese. So this series is where I feel I'm able to put a lot of my heritage and my culture into
Mm,
these books. Yeah, Chinese vampires.
that is
Which
so
if you
cool,
Google,
though.
if you Google Chinese vampires, you get a very silly green-colored zombie, which is
Wow.
not the vampire that I envision. And
Dumb.
yeah, so I wanted to write a book about that and say, this is what I envision. And so I was okay, where was I? I was listening to that audiobook. I was posting beta reader feedback, um and then inspiration struck. My vampire cast said, "You have to write about all of us gathering together for Chinese New Year or Lunar New Year."
Yes.
And then in October, I wrote a novella about that.
No way. Okay, a novella
Yeah.
about. Okay, so how does that fit in? Because yeah, how does that slot in if you already have your five written?
So it slots in here.
Oh gosh.
4.5. Because too early on, if it's too early on, that big cast hasn't come in yet. And
Right.
here I felt it was an appropriate time to slot that all in. And so okay, so I didn't write a fresh novella number. It was easy. Again, this is not like a brand new thing. I had a cast to pull on. I had scenes that I could use from other books that I felt okay didn't really fit in. So I just pulled it and then I put that in here. So it's 33,000 words. It's nice and short, very simple, just focusing on Lunar New Year. And yeah, that was nice.
Okay, two things. That's beautiful because I don't feel like there's that much representation for the
Mm.
Chinese culture, and definitely not even a smaller percentage for Chinese New Year or
Yeah,
Lunar.
yeah.
And those are beautiful, beautiful events. I mean, the ceremonies, the costume, the pageantry, they're gorgeous. We here in Houston, we have a huge Chinese community, and there's literally a section of Houston called Chinatown.
Yeah.
It's hundreds and hundreds of blocks. And when they put on their Chinese New Year, it's stunning. I mean, it's the pageantry alone.
Yeah. I wanted to capture some of that because it's a big thing here too, and it's a big thing for me every year. It definitely outshines Christmas.
Oh, of
Um,
course. Yeah, of course. For your
it's
area,
their
yeah.
thing. Yeah. So we have I mean, I know for you guys it's like Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, right? For us it's Christmas then Chinese New Year. And so that's a really big thing here. And I'm glad I was able to capture it. I'm very excited. I even came up with a title. I even have a book cover and vision for that one.
Yeah.
Just for that one. But like I said, because I have so many manuscripts, that has to wait its turn. But at least I got it out because my vampire crew was refused to keep quiet about it. When the idea struck me, they were like, "Whose house is it gonna be? What type of food is there gonna be?" Okay, and you're wondering how come vampires can eat food. So in my vampire books, there are two types of vampires. One type actually can eat food. So the
Because
ones the ones who were asking all these questions were the ones who can eat food, and they were like, "What are we gonna eat? Who's gonna be there? You know, if you invite these people, will the other people not feel happy? Blah blah blah. What are we gonna wear?
But
What
that
decorations?"
the thing is that when it's your world, there's your rules and no one else's.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I have to take this back a point because Linda, you make it sound so easy. You're like, I just wrote this book, this novella, just this, quick 33,000 words in a month, October. But for those that are listening, to just break it down and deconstruct what you're saying is, you are literally continuing to build on the world that you built. So you have a cast of characters you created. You have 5 books that you wrote. And so this novella is really the brainchild of things that you pulled out and you want to expand on. And so that's really trying to get tactical for those that are listening. How can they do that? And I know for you, it seems so easy, but I guarantee you it is not.
Okay, that does put it in perspective. I never thought of it as it's just like that, you know. And because to me, it's never easy, no matter what, because I'm always arguing with my characters. But yeah, I guess that does put it in perspective.
Because people
World
suffer from massive writer's block, massive. And some of it is like paralysis analysis, where they're like, okay, well, does she walk through the door? Does she not? If she walks through the door, does she go right, left, straight? What does she, it's a series of decisions, right? And the people don't always know what direction to take the story. But at the same time, you have those that just have writer's block where they don't have any ideas. They don't even know there's a door for her to make a decision to go, through it or not. And so for those that get stuck, how they can look back at their own reference or their own body of work and try and work themselves out of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think at this point for me, it's about knowing the characters really well and realizing that,
very, very
and yes,
intimately.
the word is intimate. Knowing them so intimately that you realize that, okay, this person wouldn't do that, or this person will answer this question that way. And I suppose the only way to get to know your characters so well is to just keep writing about them, even though you produce a crappy, lousy draft. Going back and working on that draft helps you know your character really well. Or at least that's for me. I mean, I know there are some authors that say, okay, I'm not going to write until I know every detail about these main characters and I've plotted it out. That's one way of doing it. I know some authors do that. Like they know this character was born this month, was raised here, grew up in this environment. These are their parents, that kind of thing. I don't do that. Not straight away. So for me, it's always about discovering through the writing of the story itself, and then I go back and carve out a little piece and say this person is this way because of that, and that's how I get to know them. And then when I get to know them really, really well, that's when I can do that, okay, let's do a little novella here.
Well, I mean, that's beautiful, right? Because I know what you're saying about being a discovery writer. Sometimes the first draft is telling ourselves a story. It's also introducing ourselves to our characters. And so what you're saying, though, is like there's depth to it. So even though we see, whatever that timeline is, if the story is a month, a year, a few days, a week, but they had lives before, they'll have lives after, they have different experiences. And it's literally like, okay, what would be a past month or year or life that they had and who would be in it? And then picking that up and writing a whole story on that. Did I get that, right?
Yeah, something like that. But, I'm sure it differs author to author. This is just me. This is what I've done. And, like we shared earlier, it's I don't know, it was like a dam opened and then I have all of this stuff coming out. I'm sure if I had been writing consistently over the past 10 or 15 years, it wouldn't be this huge like that. I would be a little bit more measured.
I know, but I know you're thinking it's like beautiful chaos. but at the end of it, it is just beautiful, you know, that you have all this pouring out of you. And so for those, you're right, every author's journey about how they create their manuscript is different. And so that's why I like doing this series, because to try and help other authors that are starting out, or they're stuck, or they need services, or they need ideas, or they just need to know, like, how do you write, or how does it work for her, or how does it work for that one? I think we're always looking to tips and tricks and hacks to make this easier, because, you know, it is not easy being an indie author.
No, it isn't. It's not easy being an author, I think. Even I'm in a group chat with a author who just traditionally published her debut novel, and she said it took so much out of her. She's not even thinking about the second book. And then because she's working with a publisher, they put in deadlines. Like,
Yeah.
okay, we're getting ready to publish your first novel. This is your deadline for your second manuscript. And I followed her journey, and she said it was so difficult. It was so stressful for her. By the time she submitted the second manuscript, she said, I'm done. I I'm sure she's got more, but it just reflects how stressful and tiring it can be. And yet here we are, we're all like, I don't know, nuts for just pushing on.
Doing it. I think because the stories have to be told.
Yeah, I think so too.
They have to get out, because, like, the last thing we want to do is we die and you go wherever that your beliefs tell you that you go, and then none of that got out.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a very comforting thought for me, that I know that um it's not just my kids who will remember me, it's people who read my stuff.
Yeah, it's leaving a legacy behind. But I know what
Yeah.
you're saying. I feel like the structure of publishing, well, in fact, well, I'll finish that thought. The structure of publishing can kill a good author. And I even had an editor, Dawn Alexander, who I've worked with, and she is phenomenal, booked out till 2024. But she had said that, she says so many editors and so many people under the publishing umbrella kill the talent of really good authors, because they're like either overly critical, or they want to change your story, or they want you to follow, you know, like, so something is like no adjectives and no adverbs, and there are so many rules around writing and publishing and how to do it, that people give up. It's too much. And you think, well, if you want to write your story, you can go indie, and then there's no one telling you what to do. However, you have to figure it out on your own.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've heard these things about traditional publishing too. I mean, I tried to query my romance novel. It was a half-hearted attempt. And so I haven't gone the route of, you know, having like 50 or 100 rejections. I stopped at 12, so it is half-hearted. And even then, that journey told me that the gatekeeping is so phenomenal that there's really no point going that route. And honestly, I've learned so much about self-publishing that, you know, I kind of feel like I've developed a second brain as a result.
Oh, it's a
Um,
second career for you for sure.
yeah, I've told you before, I work with patients with dementia, and, you know, I feel like my journey in the past 2 years has helped me push away dementia by at least 10 years.
Oh, girl, you have been creating huge new neural pathways. There is no
Yeah,
doubt about that.
you too, you
Way more-
too. So,
I know, because, you know, my mom battles dementia, and it is, it's just, to me, it's like a victimless crime. You know what happens
mm,
with them. It's just so, so, so sad. So yeah, us spinning out these creative brain and vampire editor, yeah, we'll be in that nursing home telling stories of, like, that chick is crazy. Talk about vampires and zombies over there. You're like, I am.
oh my goodness. Yeah, I can just imagine all of us gathered together in that one nursing home, and the staff are like,
No, my body may not work, but my
oh
mind's working just fine,
my
guys.
goodness, that would be a novel.
Okay, I have a friend, and my sister-in-law, her mother was literally 99 in a nursing home, and her body was the problem, you know, but that mind was whip sharp, and she is a old Southern American. So she had all the isms: racism, sexism, ageism. I mean, it was all of them because of just how she grew up in her life. But she would come up with the craziest stuff, and I'm like, you can't say that. And so she would call them nodders and droolers. And so I was like, you can't say that, Mama Sam. She's like, look at that old nodder or drooler. And so she couldn't make it down to the dining hall by herself. And so they paired her up with a lady who was suffering from dementia, but perfectly physically healthy. So between the two of them, they would be able to make it down to the dining hall 3 times a day.
You should write a book about that.
Oh my gosh, nobody would buy it. It is.
Make them both authors.
Well, she has now since passed, but she used to try and do, they lived in this 2-story house before they moved her into a retirement community. And she would lay on the landing of the stairs to stretch her back. And she was about 95, and they thought she had fallen and had an accident. So so she was just laying there. Her daughter walks in, has a heart attack, calls 911. They come out, and she's just like, you old pack of fuckers, I'm just stretching my back. And I'm like, yeah. She was a live wire. Yeah. But there's a million stories about her, and we used to go visit her in the nursing home. I think she ended up living there about 3 years before she finally passed. So yeah.
I don't. Oh, we do. I do see that here. Yeah, but I have, but it's usually said in whatever they're saying. It's said in the in Mandarin or in the dialects,
Yeah.
and I sometimes I just can't translate it. But I know they're poking fun at the rest of us.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Old people making fun of old people. Yeah, she was. Let me tell you, she was equal opportunity in all her isms. There was nobody who was safe. You know, it doesn't matter what you were, like what you believed, what color you were, she would get everybody. So anyway. So I have to ask you, where does the romance series, you had mentioned you have the book 1, and then you were reading that for that other author, and you kind of got like a little nugget, like,
Yeah.
Are you going to continue writing in that romance? Is there a series, or is that a standalone?
It's meant to be a standalone. Creative Brain gave me an idea for a follow-up, but because I'm not really focusing on it right now, and like I said, I gave a half-hearted query attempt. Yeah, I'm not really sure where I'm going with that one. I think, okay, there is one publisher I'm waiting for. I'm gonna email them and say, you know what? It's been almost a year. Or was it a year? No, almost like 8 or okay. 8 or 9 months, and I'm gonna drop them an email and say, you know what, bye-bye.
Well, I had no idea it takes that long.
No, I think it doesn't take that long, but I don't know what happened. I last heard from them in May, and I was supposed to email, they were supposed to get back to me latest by August, but I decided to give them another 2 months. It's November now, so I'm just gonna email them politely and say, I haven't heard from you guys. I'm gonna take this back so that I can indie publish it on my own. And then if once I do that, and again, I will be polite. I'll wait another month, and if I don't hear back from them, I'm just gonna proceed. And so that second novel that comes out next year might be the romance one. Depends on my mood. I'm a mood reader. I'm a mood publisher.
But I have a question going back to that idea that Creative Brain gave you on that second book. If now is not the time, rightfully so, you have a lot going on with the vampire series that you're going to, be launching in first quarter 24. How do you make sure you don't lose that idea? Because, that's where we get our gems, right? So where do you keep that? How does it not get lost?
Meaning new whip ideas or?
Well, yeah, you had said Creative Brain had given you a new idea for a
Oh, yeah.
follow-up book. So if
Oh,
you're not writing on working on it now, where does that go? What happens?
somewhere in Google Docs. I pen it down and I put down everything that I came up with and I put it somewhere in Google Docs. It's under a folder that says romance sequel.
Oh, okay, good. So yeah, don't you love
And it's
technology?
the same, and it's the same for any other idea I come up with. Like I put it in a separate doc. I star it, and then I say, okay, ideas for this, ideas for that. I've discovered if I put it in one document that says ideas, that document will explode, and then it will just be buried in a bunch of nonsense. So it's better to separate it by the genre or at least by the book.
Okay, that's a good tip for those that are listening. So when you have a new whip, you create its own electronic folder,
Yeah.
dump everything you know or at that time about that novel, and then it just stays there.
Yeah, that's right. Then I can find it. Otherwise, and otherwise I would be trawling through one idea
Oh,
document that might be like
it's
20
so
pages long, and
smart. Because when you have an Excel spreadsheet, you're like, no, no, you know, I mean, it's overwhelming. There's too
yeah,
much, you know, data.
exactly,
Oh,
exactly.
that's a good tip. Well, I know that we've been on a long time, and I swear, me and you could talk for hours,
I
hours.
know. I know. The other day, I really wish I was telling people that I posted and I said that I really wish that if there are authors I want to meet, it's not a famous author, it's just my fellow indie authors. I want to gather around a big table, have coffee with all of them, give them all a nice hug, and then we'll all sit and start writing on our own and not say anything for another 2 hours.
I know. I would love, you know, not a writing retreat. You hear all these all the time where people go to conferences and there's breakout sessions and you can go and meet and there's vendor booths. I'm like, no, 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 no. I just want to take all the women that I love around the world and we do that. I don't know. I'm thinking like a cozy cottage where it's like snowy, but we
Oh,
still can get like a restaurant, you know, that serves good food. You can get
yeah.
room service, but just where you can come together and it's a meeting of the minds and it just be like, you know, here's what works for me and here's what I'm doing. And it's just literally giving ideas, giving of yourself. And then, you know, we're tend to be introverted. So when we've had enough social hour, everybody like, you go back, you work on your project.
Yeah, exactly. I do have that vision too. The only thing is we're all scattered around the world, and I know people do that writing retreats like within certain areas, but I'm all by myself here, so I really can't do join anybody. So yeah, but yeah, if there's any authors I want to meet, it's just the people like you.
Oh, girl, I have a whole list. I have you, I have Sienna. I think she's still on here in Australia. We have the Scottish Whip who's in
Oh yeah.
Scotland. I have another author who's in Germany. And so, yeah, I think what we need to do is just meet up in Europe. I think that's pretty central.
Yeah. Actually, I think some mountain cabin in Europe will be fine.
We could do Switzerland. Okay, that's what I think I heard you say, like Switzerland or Mount Blanc, which is on the French side of the Swiss Alps. I think that's what you said, right?
Sounds good.
But that's why I hold my writing sprints every Saturday is because I just, you know, writing can be kind of lonely and you just want to connect with other people. Not that they're reading my whip and I'm reading their whip. It's just, you know, when you get done with a good scene, you're like, hey guys, how'd it go for y'all? Tell me what's going on. So yeah.
Mm, yeah, I know you've been doing that. It's always at a time that I'm getting ready for bed. So
Oh yeah. I know it doesn't work out for your side. My author coach is in New Zealand. So the challenge that me and you have with the time zone, I have with her. So I think like my 5 a.m. is her 11 p.m. I don't know. I have to do my
yeah,
calendar.
New Zealand is even harder because they're so far ahead.
I think she's 13 hours, 14. I always have to do it because the time changes. You know, like our
Yeah.
time changes. I wish we'd get rid of that. And so I
I know.
think,
That's why today I was like, is it 8 or 9 for me? What time am I
oh
doing?
no, oh no. So I think right now she's 14 hours ahead. but I talked to her at the end of November, so she'll be 13 hours. So I don't know. Yeah, it makes my mind hurt. But anyway, I have a few rapid fire questions if you don't mind. Okay. This is all over the place, all over your journey. Do you edit during the writing process, or do you complete the whole draft and then edit?
I don't have a rapid fire answer for that. I both.
Both.
Because let me tell you what I do. Let me tell you what I do. I typically write a chapter and I go read that chapter again and edit it. Then I move on. And then I don't read it again.
Well, it kind of makes sense because when you've been away from your manuscript, you have to kind of like reread, you know, to get the tone, the inflection, the sense of the story, and, you know, to continue on. Does that make sense? Do you edit by hand or digitally?
Digitally. I tried editing by hand about a year ago. While it was fun, I found it wasted a lot of paper and a lot of ink.
Oh.
And I still did not edit to the point that I liked. So editing digitally just works better.
I agree. Do you use the editing software such as like Grammarly or ProWriting?
No, I don't use any of that. I don't need to.
Girl, mad respect, because I used to know where commas go, and now I have no idea where comma goes. And that Oxford comma and all that, I'm like, what? For the
commas, that's what my editor and proofreader is for. Everything else, like grammar, sentences, all that, I'm fine. I do that myself.
Yeah.
Commas, yeah, no.
Because I got an error message about one of mine was like a complex compound sentence and I didn't have a comma or something. I was like, well, I don't even know what a complex compound sentence is anymore. I've been out of school so long. My daughter, who is literally honors, she has like a 4 point something. She turns around, she's like, of what a complex compound sentence is and how you break it up and how you, what she call it, sentence diagram. And I'm like, what? Very special. June bug, honey. Okay, long chapters or short chapters? What do you write?
Whatever feels right.
Ooh, I like that.
My long chapters tend to be more tense scenes where the dialogue needs to be fleshed, the action needs to be fleshed out through the dialogue. So like a villain came in and said some stuff.
Yeah, action usually tends to be longer, so you can, you know, get through the whole scene. It has to be fast paced. That makes sense.
No. So my more action scenes where there's like a fight and all that tends to be shorter.
Oh, I got that exactly opposite. Would you ever do a traditional book signing or a writing conference?
I would, except that because I'm indie published and the local scene is not very friendly to indie authors, I haven't done a traditional book signing, and the writing conferences here just don't interest me. Okay, I know I sound very like, oh, it's all beneath you when I say that, but no, I think it's just different for me. I might try it out next year, but
no, yeah. Because like in America, right, those are really popular things, but in Singapore they probably are not, or they could be more exclusive, or they could not be geared to indies, maybe traditional only.
Yeah, it's not. There's one a year. It's and most of the spots are taken up by people who are already kind of well known locally in the local writing circle. So it almost feels like they're closing me off. I can't even get a leg in if I wanted to.
I have heard that there's an author out of Australia, and she said, one, we don't have that many events, even though Australia is, you know, quite large. She said, two, she says, you really have to be known because you're not going to get a booth. They're not going to reserve it. There's, you know, like if there's only like 100 spots, you're not going to get into them for like the next 2-3 years because they're so far booked out with those popular artists and the popular authors book, you know, 2, 3, 4 years in advance. She was literally waiting for someone to cancel, get sick, or die to get in. And that's in Australia, which is a bigger market. And so she says, you know, and then it's very expensive for them to attend any of that in the US. You know, between the flight, the travel, the expense is just prohibitive for them to cross over into the American market.
I have the same problem.
Yes. So I hear what you're saying. I didn't think it was you being hoity-toity, as my mom said.
No, I think it's them. I can't get it in.
Okay. So do you like writing morally gray characters or characters with clear-cut morals?
Both. I definitely have both. Okay, but I would say I'm not very good at writing morally gray. Although I'm pretty good at making people pretend, if that makes sense.
Well, I would think vampire editor would be kind of like morally gray, like I'll do what I want. Maybe I'll burn down your house. Maybe I'll be the fire hose putting it out.
I suppose he is the ultimate morally gray character. But you see, that's what makes it so hard, because he won't tell me things.
Yeah. He's like, I'll burn down the house, but I won't tell you that I was trying to save someone, you know, or something.
Yeah, he's a character for
He's
sure.
your morally gray.
Yeah, okay.
Creating relatable characters or enigmatic characters. So he may be more enigmatic, but what about the other cast?
I would say they're all relatable in their own way. It has to be, otherwise nobody would read about them.
I think that too. People can't be like morally reprehensible, because you're like, it would be a do not finish.
Yeah. Or if they're morally reprehensible, okay, then you go onto my villain list.
That's true. Although there's a lot of people on villain arcs. They don't want them to be totally unredeemable.
Well, no, okay. Fantasy being fantasy, and even vampire books, I kind of feel that you occasionally have to have an irredeemable character, otherwise there's no conflict.
I love them, but there's a lot of people that don't. I was surprised. I was like, really? Because I love bad guys being black, you know, and that's why the bad guys wear the black clothes, the white knight.
You don't always need an antagonist with a sad backstory. Okay, I mean, to be fair, my prequel novel has that thing. I mean, I mentioned way earlier, right, that I wrote my prequel novel because my villain wanted his own backstory. Okay, fine, but I always hold that you don't always have to do that, and sometimes you just need a bad villain with crazy morals and who is immoral and who wants to do bad stuff. And you know, like my vampire novel, I do have a villain who's like that, and the other characters are kind of like, ugh. So yeah,
so fun to write.
Yeah.
Because you know that they're so bad.
Stop it. He put a Mentos in Sprite.
Oh, I know I've kept you long, and he's been so good this whole time. Okay, I just have one more question. Characters with tragic flaws, or do you prefer characters with hidden strengths?
Ooh, that is a very hard question. The questions are not rapid fire at all.
I know, tragic flaws or hidden strengths.
Okay, I like both. But I think I tend to write more the hidden strength stuff.
That's what I was thinking, because the way you had said that you like to write relatable characters, they're strong in their own way. Although I think your vampire one, he's always the like exclusive one, right? Your vampire editor, he's the one that may have a tragic flaw, but I don't know if he would care.
Actually,
he said
he has no flaws. I know him that well.
He's perfect.
He's already telling me I have no flaws.
I know, he's like, I am perfect, obviously.
Yeah, I know him that well. So, okay, I think tragic flaws, while intriguing and interesting, I think the way I am as a writer, I probably write myself either into a corner or write my character into a way that I don't like. Like they'll just end up being annoying. Like the flaw ends up being not tragic, but it becomes annoying.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, Linda, it has been like the fastest hour and a half talking to you. And I tell you, like I said, we could go on. I
Oh my
know
goodness.
me and you will one day have to meet in person, but it would have to be a weekend because we would be hanging out so much.
Probably, probably. Or we'll just coop up together for a writing retreat and then we'll talk for an hour, go write for like the rest of the
Yeah,
day.
in the Swiss Alps.
Yay!
We'll plan that. We'll put that on the schedule. Well, you know, all my love, I'm always rooting for you from afar, and I will continue to support you in your author journey and meet you in the DMs.
Yeah. Um, and yeah, I'm looking forward to sharing more about my vampire novel once I have the cover done. And like I said, tagline and blurb is just done. Waiting for me to kind of put it into a nice post so I can share that.
Well, I will be on the lookout so I can share it too.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on
It's so
again.
fun. Okay, so we're going to plan this again. We'll do our fourth interview after our book comes out so we can promote it.
Yay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You
You're
have a
so
good
sweet, doll.
evening. Bye.
Bye.